So I've been listening and finished recently the very compelling audiobook of the very compelling book, the memoir entitled Strangers, written by Belle Burden. It's fantastic. It's about her experience of being in what appeared to be sort of an ordinary marriage. I mean, there are definitely people from a higher echelon of society, but it's just an ordinary marriage that crumbled seemingly out of nowhere. Ms. Burden thought she was happily married, and then she found out he was having an affair, and then he wanted a divorce, and he walked out on her, their life, and most pointedly, their kids, and appeared to be happy as a pig in shit in his new life, and I guess with his new partner for a moment in time, I guess who he was having an affair with. Does any of that sound familiar? Now, listening to this book, we already know the punchline as we listen to her talk about the early part of her relationship with him, right? The courtship, the connection, the attraction, the life that they were building together. And we're listening to the book because we already know what happens from the beginning, so we're listening for every warning sign. I mean, they did have a relatively quick engagement. He kind of felt like a social climber. And he was interested in her, but he became really interested in her once he recognized her family history and pedigree. There are other red flags were some of the rigidity and his obsessive order in his environment. It's kind of like watching a murder mystery the second time around, and now all of the clues seem so clear to us, right? Any one of these things by themselves, especially as and I have to say, she very compassionately took this on. As she described them in real time, anyone seeing the things she was seeing, actually a lot of it would not have rung and registered as a red flag per se. Because at the same time these retrospective red flags were happening, there was a lot of happiness in the story she was sharing. It's falling in love, building connection. They were melding two lives. They were thinking about building a family. She was feeling a sense of belonging. Those are very powerful things to feel. They became sort of like a blurring, right? Can see it clearly. It's like one of those Zoom backgrounds that hide your messy room. The red flag kind of gets fade or it blurs away. You can't see it clearly. Or it becomes so blurry that you can see there's something back there that's red, but you can't tell what it is. However, the whole list of them all together, as I read the book, I even jotted them down, or listened to the book, I jotted them down. That felt different. Now, I've been asked the question hundreds of times in interviews. Dr. Romani, what are the red flags? What are the red flags? What are the red flags of an unhealthy relationship? I hate the question. I really do. I feel like it puts the onus on a person in a relationship to be a relationship detective. That while you in good faith are being open-hearted and curious and getting to know someone, that it is also your problem to figure out if their behavior is a problem, which is hard to do when there's a few bad things or things that are sort of a little bit, that's odd, interspersed with cool, fun, exciting new things. It's again, back to the needle in the haystack, except that the hay is really seductive. Obviously, there are things that aren't really red flags. Like if you're in a relationship, let's say you're in a relationship with someone, they're not red flags, they're smoking guns. Someone steals money out of your wallet on a first date, or they ask the server for a phone number and a date while you're sitting there, or they ask you to marry you on a first date, or they go to the bathroom and come back. Like those aren't red flags. That's a neon sign, okay? So, and that's not what 99% of people see. So if we aren't seeing these sorts of smoking guns, everything else that happens that isn't maybe patently wrong, but could be questionable, all of that gets filed under red flags. Yeah, maybe they're a little late. Maybe they curse a lot. Maybe they keep bringing up an ex. Maybe their story doesn't line up with what they told you when they were texting you. Maybe they go silent for 4 days and emerge with a fantastical story. I was on a work trip and I work in a high security clearance job and couldn't be in touch. Or I was in the hospital but now they look perfectly fine and had been on social media during said hospitalization. But you get what I'm saying, right? Or like you say, do you mind if I put this down in your car? And they kind of like, no, my car has to be pristine. I don't know. Depending on how the other stuff is going, some of these things get blurred. But this woman, Val Burden's memoir, wasn't just about a first date. And in fact, these people, her and now her ex-husband, they had known each other for a little bit. I think they had initially been working at a large law firm and were working in different divisions of this place. The book was about 20 years of marriage, but then that culminated in a cruel about-face and walking out on their life. The issue when we look for red flags is that we're looking for these very clearly sort of discernible episodes or instances, sort of singular measurable things. Instead of what I guess I realized after listening to her book is what I think is actually more of like a red line, a continuous line of issues. This series of things, because relationships don't fall apart because of one red flag. It's about a line, a continuous line of things, one after the other, after the other, after the other. It's not just being late. It's frequently, almost always being late. Getting caught in a lie, driving like a maniac, being entitled with a waiter, never listening, putting down your friends. It's all those things. It's not just one time being late. It's all those things. But all of these things may not happen in one day or even in the same month. The space between these things on that red line may be normal or even delightful. It's almost like two roads running in parallel to each other, the red road and the normal road. Understanding the red flags or the little red dots that ultimately make up this red line, which is the real issue. It's the things that don't feel good and the challenges that we tend to doubt ourselves. I am being neurotic. I am being fussy, unrealistic, demanding, greedy, too much. Selfish, I should say. Too much. I said selfie, but I meant selfish. By focusing on this one thing. People will think in the relationship, I'm not perfect after all. So not only is this red line embedded in a whole lot of normal, it draws out very slowly. And even when we do start picking out the little red dots that make up that steady red line, we still think, nah, it's me. I'm being fussy. I'm overthinking it. The post-mortem on a narcissistic relationship is not easy. It can sometimes be years of rumination after a relationship ends. What did I miss? Why didn't I leave then? Why didn't I even recognize this or that or that or this behavior was a red flag or red dot? That's part of the red line. And then, unfortunately, it pivots into, I'm so dumb, I'm so foolish, I'm a codependent, I'm just like my mother, I'm just like my aunt, I can't trust myself. Before you know it, someone hurt you, and you are thinking about it as though you were the perpetrator, or at the very least, you were just really dumb. And that's why it didn't work out. I think, and I believe, that red flag hunts, especially early in a relationship, don't always work out. Like I said, when it's the smoking gun stuff that happens, like someone asking a waiter for a phone number on a first date, we see that. But the more meaningful way to think on this may be to be aware of our own lifetime patterns. Where are our blind spots? What are things that, if they happen to me, would feel really corrective based on my history, but are actually corrosive? Like an example of this could be a controlling person may actually feel like they're taking care of things because maybe that didn't happen in other relationships or a family of origin. A partner comes along and says that, I got it. Let me make the arrangements. Let me plan the trip. Let me pick the apartment. I can take care of all the financial stuff because that's what I do in my job. Now they feel responsible. They feel grown-uppy. And they may even feel really financially responsible. All of that can feel like an offset to perhaps having had a financially irresponsible parent or a financially irresponsible ex. It can also feel like being cared for. It is about understanding how we respond when we feel unsafe. Do you fawn? Do you freeze? Do you fight? It's about recognizing that we can simultaneously metabolize nice experiences and uncomfortable ones and create a more realistic picture instead of having to feel like we have to cut off, trim off, silence the uncomfortable ones. It's also, though, about understanding the societal pressures that many people feel, a sense of a ticking clock, to get into a permanent partnership, to have kids, to create your own family. And the old voices that we may find hard to silence, a parental or sibling voice echoing with things like, ugh, you better grab that one. You'd be lucky if somebody wants to be with you. Listening to Belle Burden's memoir reminded me that it's not just one thing. It never is. There are certainly things that should lead us to sit up straight and pay more attention in a relationship. Callousness, disconnects in empathy, a person seeming as though they are being empathic to us, but then may speak really cruelly and dismissively about other people. To pay attention to things like entitlement, frequent criticism, a disconnect between words and actions, a chronic centering of themselves, and heavy selfishness, a lack of interest in you and other people unless it is forwarding their cause or is relevant to them. But so all these patterns I just listed may be familiar and ancient, so we don't sit up straight and notice them as a problem. In fact, we might even be more suspicious if a person showed up and was nice and warm and respectful and kind. But after uncomfortable or problem behaviors happen, we also need to think about what it feels like if we were to not excuse their behavior, if we were to sit with and say, whoa, this is a problem. And all of this red dot, red line seeing, it feels aspirational. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is considered a part of empathy. And seeing that red line may feel at odds with that. It is hard to keep the empathy and to balance against the cost of registering things that are happening in the relationship that don't feel right. Mostly, we finally get this after we have been through it, and our trust has been dented and bruised, and the risk is we overcorrect, and suddenly it's not us missing the red flags or seeing the red line, but everything starts to feel like a damned red tidal wave. The middle is a luxurious place. The middle is a place that requires us to have trust in ourselves, which isn't easy, a sense of safety, to manage that dialectic between their inconsistent behavior and our experience. And it takes a minute to get there. And perhaps to stop being so hard on ourselves for not picking up on and acting on those red flags that get lost in the blur. But recognize that it is a line with a lot of breaks in it. And it takes a minute, again, or maybe decades to actually see it. And we, on top of that, might have red-colored glasses from our own histories so that we can't see it. But once we see it, we see the pattern and we see the red line, and you do the work and you have the support, the hope is then that you can't unsee it. Thanks again.